Now that I got hair.
That's awesome. Yeah, right? You got to update these photos.
Yeah.
You're live. Hey, everybody. How you guys doing today?
Hey, guys.
We are back with another Organics Q&A with Tad Hussey from KIS Organics. And, Chad Westport. I see some of you guys in chat talking about the beans. Yes, we do. FYI, I had a drop today on the Daga.garden site. And there we go. Okay, the counter. So yeah, Daga.garden at noon, which a couple hours ago, 100 packs, but it was special. It was t-shirt, 15 femmes of the Westport posse, 4 femme testers of No Joke, some stickers, and a t-shirt for $35 plus shipping, which is stupid. I didn't post it yesterday because I don't think people would have believed it. But that's going good. So yes, those beans are still in there, Mr. Just Coolin', and I want to say thanks to everybody in chat who is supporting. I know a lot of you already picked some up. I looked kind of before we got on here, and there's less than 20 left. So if you wear a small t-shirt size, though, you're in luck because there were 6 of those left. So that's good. Other sizes are almost gone. The double XLs are gone. But that's not why you guys are here. I just want to say thanks for support.
What's the website, Chad? I have to go check that out. That's a hell of a deal, even just for the shirt.
Daga.garden.
Do you want to throw it in the comments or?
Yeah. Actually, thank you. I will do that here.
Daga.garden. That didn't work for me. Is it?
Yep. DAGGA. I'll type it up as a banner here because YouTube is silly about posting certain websites, and this is one of them that sometimes if it shows up in the link or if it shows up in the show note description, they want to put you in timeout, sometimes even in chat. So Daga.garden, that is where they are at. But yeah, you can check that out.
Nice. And they get the shirt too, huh?
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. I'm stoked. It'll be cool to hopefully see some people wearing a shirt out there. So picture of somebody in a shirt. That'll kind of blow my mind that, a fun little logo that I've been using for years will be somewhere out there in the world, someone wearing it. That's kind of cool to me.
So before we get started, funny story on that note. My brother was in Bangkok and he stumbled across a guy wearing a KIS Organics shirt. Turned out it was Louisa, who works with KIS. It was her brother who happened to also be in Bangkok. So they started talking, became friends, went out to dinner, hung out for a bit. But like, how random is that? There's not that many of those shirts in the world.
No, that is random, and that's so awesome, and it serves as a conversation starter. I saw one guy on our regular walks. Me and my wife will take a walk towards the beach every day, and we saw this guy, and he had something that said like Pheno Hunters on his shirt. And as we're walking by, I kind of like looked the dude up. I'm like, he might smoke. I'm like, so you're into pheno hunting?
Yeah.
Kind of did one of those. We wound up talking. He wound up sharing some of the best dabs I've ever had in my life. That is no joke with me. He's like, you guys smoke? Here, I want you to take this. He was just in town on vacation. But yeah, the t-shirts get the conversation started. But Bangkok, that's a long way from home.
Yeah, no, totally random. Kind of fun. So, anyway, well, let's get this thing going. What did you want to start off with today?
Yeah, okay. So we had one spillover question from the week before. And a lot of times, I always look at all the comments because we ask you guys to, toss up some comments if you have any questions that we maybe didn't get to in the show. And it's usually a good sign if you don't see me like respond or put a heart. That means we're thinking about it. And this one came in and I just left it alone because I didn't have an answer for it. But it was feeding off of something that you were talking about last week, which was fish hydrolysate. And let's see here. I wonder if I can actually just copy and paste this into the StreamYard notes, and then that way people would be able to see that. Let me try that real quick, because it's kind of a longer question, but we'll see if I'm limited by characters.
Well, while you're working on that, we can talk a little bit
Yep.
about fish hydrolysate. So, fish hydrolysate, I did a whole podcast with Casey Schonenberg, if I'm saying his last name right, with Dram. They make a fish hydrolysate product, and he kind of talks about the whole process. So, if you want to learn about fish hydrolysate for an hour, you can go check that out. It was years ago too, so I don't remember everything, and I probably should refresh my memory. But what I can tell you a little bit about fish is they take the fish, it's all the leftover guts and everything like that, and then they use enzymes to break it all down so it becomes less what's the word I'm looking for, particulate, into more of like a liquid. Yeah, emulsion. Thank you. And then the phosphoric acid lowers the pH and keeps it stable. This is typically how it's done commercially, which is why you see fish hydrolysate having a higher P number. That's not that phosphorus is not coming from the fish. It's coming from this, which is allowed by National Organic Program standards to stabilize the material, because that fish, as the enzymes are still releasing calcium, which will jack up the pH. And as the pH rises, you get more microbes that are going to want to eat it. So it won't last very long. So that's why they lower the pH to an acidic level that will keep it stabilized and have a longer shelf life. So hope that answers it.
Well, it does. It gives them a place to start and also a place to go learn more. So where, again, was this podcast that you did? Like, where can people find it if they're, because again, we're casting on two channels, the KIS Organics and the Chad Westport YouTube channel. So where can people go to specifically find that information and episode?
Let me find the, here we go. It was episode 28. Yeah, this was a long time ago. Talking about how the fish hydrolysate is made and the differences between fish hydrolysate and fish emulsion. I need to go back and listen to it myself because it's been a while. But yeah, he covers all of it in there for folks that really want to dive deep.
Awesome. And again, that's that's always one thing I say, and that's something I appreciate about you. Hopefully, other people appreciate about me. Is sometimes when we get a question, if we don't have an answer, we're pretty upfront with it. We'll share what we know, the questions we have, but also where you can find the answer or where we would look for the answer, because that's equally important. Because you don't want to give everybody really training wheels either. It's like, you will find the answer here. Search it out yourself, because you'll probably retain it a lot more than if I just blah 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 blah. So I like that. That's a quality I look for in all people that you're trying to learn from. Don't BS me, man. And we had a good sign, Gateway to the Garden. Appreciate you showing up once again. He says, do you gentlemen have a topic for questions today? And I want to propose one, because this is something I'm putting down the arms on my chair right now, because I'm about to lean in and get serious. Last time we were talking towards the end of the show, and I had brought up Matthew Powers, who looks really into soil food web, and that kind of started the conversation of like soil food web versus like having adequate nutrition in the soil. And for the inexperienced, and I would put myself in that category, I didn't really necessarily know or see a distinction or a delineation there, because how I understand it, and a lot of us understand it, and this is maybe what I'd like to talk about today, is some of these things, but the organic nutrients we put into the soil aren't plant available. So we need microbes to make them plant available. So that would be kind of the soil food web aspect. But at the same time, from how I understand it, those microbes don't generate, like, they need inputs before they can make the nutrients that the plants get. So it's not just having the microbes, you have to have the nutrition there. So I thought it was like a symbiotic thing, whereas maybe there's distinctive camp. So long question, I know. So is it true that organic compounds need microbes to make things plant available, or are there plant available forms already that really don't need the microbes?
It's complicated. Yeah.
Oh,
So I know that's such a, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. This is a complex topic. It's slightly controversial in the weed world. It's not controversial in soil science.
okay.
They don't even have these conversations, which is the funny thing about all this. So, yes, for the most part, you're right, but there are exceptions. So when we talk about like, plants can't, or microbes can't make minerals out of thin air. Well, they can they can fixate atmospheric nitrogen. So that's just one example of something that could fall under that category. When we talk about other minerals and things like that, for the most part, yeah, you're right. So the tree or whatever, let's just take a forest, an insect dies, a tree drops its leaves. That carbon source is then broken down by microbes into smaller amounts, smaller constituents, until it eventually gets broken down into an ionic form where the plant can then take it back up. And some of this is controlled by the plant. Some of this is controlled by the microbes. It's a very symbiotic process. It's this whole functional ecology that's been established over time by microbes and plants. Now, what seems to be controversial about this is the fact that some experts, influencers, have put a lot of emphasis on the microbes themselves. So I've heard claims like all soils contain sufficient minerals to grow a healthy plant. Or if your plant is unhealthy or it has pests, that's because you don't have the right microbes in place to protect the plant. And both of those statements to me are too far. I just think they're misleading in terms of what's actually going on in real world situations. So, I just say it's complicated. And so what I look at is, if we can optimize fertility, if we can get all the minerals in there, because every time you harvest a plant, you're pulling out minerals, you're pulling out organic matter, you're pulling out carbon. All of that's what's ending up with your final bud or your whatever doesn't make it back into the soil. That's not a closed ecosystem. We're selecting for the plants that we want rather than ones that we consider weeds. That's not a natural system at all. So when we talk about it from a soil science perspective, they're less concerned about microbes because the microbes just show up. They're ubiquitous. Like if we take good care of our soil and treat it properly, we don't dump a whole bunch of chemical salts on it. We're not tilling it. We're covering our soil so it's not eroding outside. If we just have good basic agronomic practices, keep the soil evenly moist, then these microbes will be happy and healthy and they'll thrive. So I tend to fall on the mineral side of things for this reason, because I want to focus on something that we can quantify very easily. We can't quantify microbes very easily. We can look and see what functional sets of microbes are present in the form of, do we have bacteria and archaea, flagellates, ciliates, amoeba, nematodes, earthworms, on and on. But we're not identifying the species for the most part.
Right.
And these microbes are fluctuating in the soil dramatically, which is why I think fungal to bacteria ratios are not a very useful tool for the most part for making management decisions in your garden. So while I love looking down a microscope, I don't tend to use that for making a lot of actionable decisions about how I'm managing fertility in my garden. There's little things that you can use it for. We could talk about that at some point, but I guess that's kind of the overall idea of what those big differences are. But these camps really fight with each other, and you kind of have to pick a side.
I know, right? Well, I mean, to start out, you said like traditional soil science, this isn't even really a conversation. Is this something that they have looked at? Or because I know
Yeah.
Traditional agriculture is getting more invested into a healthier soil, which involves, more microbes. Caveat, this number may have been adjusted, but we truly only know less than 5% of the stuff that's actually in the soil. So we make all of these statements and theories or processes based off of 95% ignorance to what is actually going on. But it seems like traditional agriculture is starting to look at that. I mean, there is literally acres and acres of Monsanto lab created microbes in the soil right now because they're trying to remediate and bring health back. So was that part of their conversation, or have they just not? Sorry, I guess, was it a worthy conversation for them to have, or have they just not gotten to that conversation yet? Because if they're not discussing it, I'm curious why.
Well, so let me clarify that statement. That's a good point. So it's not that soil scientists aren't looking at microbes. They absolutely are. And I don't think anyone would discredit the role of microbial activity and in nutrient cycling in general. But what they're doing is managing that through fertility management. Or they're looking at carbon, they're looking at organic matter, they're looking at these various fertilizers and what their impact is on soil health and overall plant health. And when I say soil health, a lot of that I'm talking about is microbial health in the soil. So it's not that they're not looking at it, but they're not using it as a management tool like the Soil Food Web folks are. And that's the reason for that, I think, is because, like you said, there's a lot we don't know. In fact, one of the coolest things I ever heard from a soil scientist at a talk was he said, we know more about what's going on at the bottom of the ocean than we do with what's directly under our feet. And I thought that was really cool. I was like, that's true in a lot of ways. And we're learning a lot, but we're just scratching the surface, like you said. So I just think, this idea, like, here's where I struggle with it. So this idea that if you take, let's say your plant's unhealthy and they say, okay, well, you need to get this complete compost on there. You don't have the right microbes in place. And that's why, you're not talking minerals at this point. Or if your plant has pest pressure, you have aphids. Oh, well, that's because you didn't have the right microbes there to protect the plant, make it healthy enough to resist the aphids. And there just is not the research to support that. And I think it's a dangerous, it's a dangerous marketing message, because I think growers can get in trouble going down that route. And I've seen farmers fail going down that route. So that's why I struggle with it, because you're selling a methodology and you're selling a product. You have the compost tea or the compost,
the magic.
Yeah. And then it's starting to feel like snake oil. Whereas I'd rather look at a soil test and say, oh, okay, well, actually it's because your pH is really out of whack, or your calcium is really low, or there's no nitrogen here for the microbes to process. So let's adjust those things and get it back in your range. The plant's going to be, creating exudates into the rhizosphere that's going to be selecting from microbes to thrive, that it wants to thrive, that are indigenous to your environment. And then those are going to cycle those nutrients and make them available, and your plant's going to be happy and healthy. That's the big difference.
I absolutely agree with you in the aspect of it's not a clear cut, or people who say one thing definitively is always kind of a dangerous answer, because it typically there's a lot of bleed over or a lot of spillover. If people are saying, well, it has, you have to again have this or else it's going to be fail. I don't know. That kind of reminds me again, this, we are talking about organics here, but we've all smoked really, really tremendously synthetic grown cannabis at one point. We may be moving on from that, but anybody who says you can't do it that way is full of it. So I relate that back to anybody who says you can't do it without those their regimen of microbes may be full of it as well. Because again, I always tend to find the answers in the middle. That's why I was a little like thrown by the comment. I'm like, wow, I thought everybody was harmonious here. But when people are invested personally, financially in certain certain methods, that's when sometimes you get that marketing message like you were talking about, where it has to be, or it's all or nothing. And those are the things to stay away from. I think that's kind of where you were, or what you were saying in a small sense.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's selling something. And to be clear, I have a soil company. We still sell compost tea, and I think it has a lot of benefits. But I don't make the same claims around it that a lot of people do. Soul Food Web is selling courses that they want you to take to become a lab tech or learn how to use the microscope. Matt Powers is selling his book. Steve Solomon and those guys are selling their books. So at the end of the day, like we all have a marketing message, and people really need to do their own research and dig through it and figure out what resonates for them. And at the end of the day, if you want to grow with the Soul Food Web approach and you are happy with what you're growing and it's working for you, like I'm not here to like wave a science wand and tell you that what you're doing is wrong. That's not what this is about.
Science wand.
But I would be able to, I think, work backwards and say, well, that's because I can see from the soil test that you actually have good sufficiency of all your major elements. And, you're doing a lot of things right, along with, a lot of the stuff the Soil Food Web people do is good. I just think the reasons for it is not necessarily always correct. Because I think we do need to focus on mineral fertility. Not in the sense of chemical fertilizers, but just in the sense of getting the right minerals in the soil for the plants to cycle them, and also carbon. So that's I think that's a great way to approach it.
So that's, again, thank you for kind of help clarifying that for me and for everybody listening, because you're right. We do get a lot of stuff, a lot of information from both sides. And one of the things that, I thought, actually, let me put up this question here from Adam. It says, all right, let me blow it up to the bubbles. Makes it easier for everybody to read, including myself. Let's see here. All right, so Adam says, okay, Chad Westport, I'm trying to run a living soil bed and will need to feed dry amendments at day 30, but the plant finishes at day 45. Should I hold off on my day 30 feeding? I say yes. Tad, you're shaking your head yes too.
I agree with you. Yeah. I think you have to look. You have to look like 1 to 2 weeks into the future whenever you do an application. So this actually happened to me, Adam. I had some soil, some of our commercial growers mix that I'd had sitting outside for 18 months, and I started using it, like 18 months later. It's in a giant tote, and it had been rained on, snowed on. It was closed up in the tote though, so I thought, okay, it's going to be fine. Picture one of those big white yard sacks. Didn't do any testing. Halfway through the cycle, my plants started yellowing. They had a clear nitrogen deficiency, along with just an overall low fertility. And I realized, oh crap, it's too late. What I should have done is applied some liquid fish or some sort of organic bloom formula, something even with a little bit of nitrogen in there. I probably could have even done like an organic grow formula just to raise the overall fertility in the soil. I did I did some insect frass and a couple other things just because that was what I had on hand. It wasn't enough. It didn't raise the fertility fast enough. And I knew that going in, and I still did it. So yes, I would say if your plants are going to need additional feeding and flower, I like end of the first week of flower, and then maybe again the end of the third week. And then you're kind of done with dry amendments at that point.
And that's how I like to do it too. Again, using the nutrient pack, the dry amendments. I don't apply when I have 4 weeks left. I usually try to do it like 4 weeks is my last application, based on it's going to take a couple weeks. I've already got it backlogged in the soil. 3 weeks, it'll kind of be spent. So yeah, I actually hold off at the end. For me personally, again, I prefer quality to quantity. But on the scale that I'm doing it, I may lose maybe a few grams in overall total yield. So really not making too much of a difference. I save money on my dry amendments. I'm not applying it when it's not necessarily needed. So I probably wind up saving more of the cost benefit there. I have no problem with it. Plus, I like to see a nice fade. But that does lead to kind of another question that we can tie in with the nutrients and the microbes. One thing that I have heard a lot, and I suggested it too, and I've tried it myself, but when you're starting to see a little bit of a deficiency in maybe the plant, but you know that you have it in the soil, like you've fed your dry amendments, you've been doing that, the nutrients should be in there. Minus caveats of temperatures and pHs is just a basic question, but if the plant's showing a little deficiency, and I know nutrients are in the soil, I've always heard to turbocharge the nutrient uptake, add more microbes, because they will make it more plant, or they will increase the amount of plant available minerals in the soil. Is that a worthy route to go, or would you prefer something more fast acting like the fish hydrolysate that you just mentioned?
Oh boy, both approaches work in their own way. When you're adding fish hydrolysate, you're adding available phosphorus, which is really nice. So phosphate, you're getting a little bit of N and a little bit of K, and you're getting microbe food. So you're feeding the microbes that are already in there, which should increase nutrient cycling. The other approach is you're using, let's say a compost tea, you're getting more microbes, and then you're also adding a little bit of nitrogen as fertility as well. Whatever fertility was in that compost is getting put out too. So that'll speed up things too. So I think they both accomplish the same thing, just kind of in two different ways.
Okay. Multiple.
Yeah, it depends what the deficiency is too. Like if I had a calcium deficiency, I would look at what my evapotranspiration rates are and make sure that I have my room dialed, because calcium, moves through the same channel as water in the plant. So it's important to kind of look at what your issue is. If I had a magnesium deficiency, I might want to do a foliar application with Epsom salt as a way of addressing that faster. So getting good at identifying deficiencies and visual symptoms is really important. And then knowing that you just can't top dress something like a dry amendment and get an immediate response. You're going to be waiting a week or two. So maybe you do a Band-Aid approach, one of the things that we've talked about already here. And then you do your dry amendment or top dressing, knowing that that's going to keep you going a little bit further if your flower cycles, if this happens early in flower, for example.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I'm like pondering in my head if this is too general of a question. Because I've also heard that nematodes can be destructive in the root zone.
Well, some can.
Okay. And again, is this because maybe we don't differentiate the different types of nematodes or different microbes in the soil? Like, because they're not all beneficial and they're not all damaging, are they? I have mixed information on nematodes. I don't know. Help me out.
Yeah. So nematodes, you can pronounce it either way. So I don't think there's a correct terminology there. There are a bunch of that are bacterial feeding nematodes that specifically cycle nutrients. They eat a ton of bacteria, cruising around like little worms in your soil. And then what they excrete is now an ionic form, a plant-based, a plant available nutrients. So they do a lot of good. There are predatory nematodes as well. There are root feeding nematodes, which are bad. So you can't really classify them. It's the same with all of these sets of organisms. Someone today, actually, because I posted a video, I had some mold growth on the top of my soil because I'd added some of our amendments into the soil to re-amend my soil. And I just said, I take that fuzzy mold and I just mix it back into the soil and forget about it. And the guy was like, well, why do you do that? Like, don't you know that molds are good? You of all people should know that. Like, why would you not try and encourage it? And I thought that was a great question. So we kind of I think I need to do a whole post on it, but I think, I think it's important to look at, everything situationally. With the mold, like I mix it back in because I don't want to risk it, on the tiniest chance that it produces mycotoxins. I don't want that in the air. And other than most molds are just innocuous in the soil, it's not doing anything really good or bad, just breaking down those food sources. But I have all these other things breaking down the food sources. So by turning it back into the soil, I figure that's the easiest way to deal with it. But like if it was a horticulture program or, an ornamental horticulture production setup, like
commercial scales.
Yeah. There's no way they would ever leave any kind of mold growth on the media or in the facility. So it's just so interesting how cannabis takes such a different approach to everything, in terms of what they're okay with and what they're not okay with too, or what's good and bad.
Yeah. And I mean, because from like a commercial sense, you have to have zero tolerance to things like that. You have to be very proactive with a lot of things that you do in the IPM regimen versus like a home grower, because literally millions of dollars are on the line. I remember when I was mixing nutrients for the commercial company, and I'm like, if I have a bad day, I fry $250,000 a room at a time. So you have to be on point, and there's zero tolerance with that stuff. So I can see why commercially it would be taken out, but that doesn't necessarily, to me as a home grower, means it's a bad thing. It's just it's a liability for them. Whereas for me, I always get a little bit of joy of seeing that white fuzz after I do a top dressing. So I'm like, that's organic, it's working. So yeah. I leave it alone. It never gets out of control, but it does. It's like that little badge of pride. You're like, yep, it's doing something. My shampoo, it tingles. So.
Yeah, it just means there's microbes in there working on the material. But we knew there would be. That's the whole thing to me. Like I had no doubt that was going to happen, assuming the temperature in my room wasn't too cold because I'm not heating it right now. So we know that they're dependent on temperature and oxygen and moisture. So if we give them those things and we give them a food source, they're going to take off. Yeah.
Now, this isn't cannabis related. So I don't know if we're going to have an answer. Immediately the sign or the thing that pops into my head is Karate Kid 3, where they're taking the bonsai from the side of the cliff. That's just my random
Karate Kid 3.
Okay. You should go see it and then watch Cobra Kai on Netflix too. But
which one was 3? Is that the one with Jaden?
That was like 4 or 5. So
okay, is it the one with the girl?
Yeah. So one is like the traditional one. 2 is where they go to Okinawa. 3, they come back and he's trying to open up a bonsai store. And then maybe I think 4 is when the girl gets into it. He has a girlfriend, but she's not the fighter. Whereas future ones, we are so off topic.
All right, maybe I did see it. It's been so long because 2 was my favorite. Well, 1 was really good, but 2 was awesome. I don't remember really beyond 2. We don't have to do
that. I'm gonna keep rolling on this, but the bad guy from part 2, the one that Danielson had to fight, owns a restaurant in Seattle.
No way.
He's like a really great chef, and he has a restaurant in Seattle. And I learned that when he reprised his role on the Cobra Kai series on Netflix. They talked all about him. Yeah, restaurateur in Seattle.
He was badass. All right, you'll have to send me that link offline. I'm so curious. I'd go check it out just to see him.
Yeah, I would if I was in the area. Seriously. All right. Show back on track. Pizza Chad. That's a great name. He says, could either of you discuss how you think nutrient cycling may work with epiphytic plants? And thank you for the explanation, because I would have had to Google that. But he says, those that grow above ground, whether growing in trees or on cliffs. So essentially things that don't have like soil to send their roots down into.
Air plants.
I know rocks over time. What's that?
Orchids, air plants. I think orchids are,
Oh yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
epiphytes.
Okay.
I don't know a lot about them, honestly. It's not anything I've really looked into. I don't think they need a lot of nutrients, for one. They're more dependent upon moisture and air. But I haven't really done a lot of research with them. I've been pretty focused on cannabis over the last decade, but I think it would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, great question. It kind of does show how wide the plant world is and how, a lot of this does cross over. But I like that. I mean, at the end of the day, hopefully I haven't said that too many times this episode because I love saying that. But at the end of the day, a lot of the minerals that we get are like rock dust minerals. Granted, it takes eons before those things break down, but is it able to glean or, mine some of that while it's just trying to grow itself? I'm wondering if it's mining from specifically the rock face. And then I think instantly to Hawaii and the lava fields as well, because that's very shallow soil, but nutrient dense as well. All right, let's see. I'm going to go to another question here in chat.
I just sent you a good one on the.
Yeah, I saw your note there. I'm going to scroll up and look for that here. There we go. Blazefire says, how dry can I let my pots get without it killing off my microbes when I'm doing a dry back? So, couple questions in there. Do you want to go for that?
Sure. I was still figuring out the name Blaze Fire. I had to think about that. I was like, isn't a blaze and a fire the same thing? And I realized he was blazing fire. Anyway, good name. Yeah. So here's the great thing about this. Drybacks will slow down plant growth because of drought stress on your root hairs is not great. The good news is they're going to come back. The microbes come back because their life cycles are so much quicker than ours. I mean, we're talking period minutes to hours in a lot of cases. It's not the end of the world, but in an organic system, I tend to try and avoid big drybacks. So you're going to have some fluctuation naturally in hydrology in your pot. And overall, that's fine. We just want to keep it into a tighter window because every time we water, we're actually getting good gas exchange as well. We're pushing oxygen down into the soil, which is important for healthy roots as well. So yeah, short answer, don't do it and you won't kill off microbes. A little bit longer answer, if you do kill off some microbes because you do a dry back, don't freak out. Just re-wet the soil and get it back into that optimal range, because there really is like an optimal range for plant health. Too wet and we're risking pathogens. You're getting conditions where the roots are going to die because there's no oxygen there. So there really is a good balance.
Awesome. And yeah, because that's, again, one thing I've heard with living soils is it's ideal to maintain a steady moisture content versus letting it fluctuate. So that would kind of neutralize some of the some of the arguments there. Let's see here. I was flipping we had a couple questions here. Oh, same question. Or same person. Awesome. Thank you for being consistent. And Joseph, I'm looking for your question too.
Maybe Andreas, Joseph, you resend it.
Yep.
Retap
Joseph,
it in the chat.
Yep. Andreas, so on the topic of nutrient cycling, how big of a role does rhizophagy cycle play?
Yes. I don't know the answer to that. I don't even know if we know the answer to that. I don't know if James White has given an exact percentage in terms of what role, but essentially I could talk a little about what rhizophagy is if people are interested. Essentially it's this idea of endophytic microbes, and it's something actually that's been around. It was I think discovered by Clairholm out of Europe a long time ago, but Dr. James White really popularized it recently with Jeff Lowenfeld's new book, Teaming with Microbes. And yeah, right on, Smiley. It totally is. In terms of the rhizophagy, essentially what's happening is bacteria, specific species of bacteria, endophytic bacteria. Endo just means I believe, inside of. And so what'll happen is the endophytic bacteria will go inside of the plant root cells, shed its cellular wall, and give all these nutrients to the plant, and then get kicked back out through the root tips and reform cellular wall out in the soil, go around, gather up more nutrients, and essentially be taken up by the plant again. And this is a process that is something that we didn't really understand or know much about until more recently in research. So yeah, Jeff's done a lot of talks on this. There's the book if you want to really dive into more about what that is. I have a presentation on my YouTube channel where he's talking just about this that he did to my soil Sand and Soil Garden Club here where I live. So yeah, if people want to dive into it, you can.
Okay, awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm like, I know I've dove into this recently. As soon as you said the endophytic bacteria, I'm like, James White. So little story about like Jeff Lowenfels. We love his books. These books are like typically the first thing I recommend to people to get a good overview of it. But Jeff Lowenfels is kind of like a curator. He is he's a master gardener. But a lot of this information, like he compiles and he uses the knowledge that he has to put it in the format where we can all enjoy it and read it and still be entertained. But Dr. James White, I believe from Harvard, was the one who does a lot of the endophytic bacteria studies. But that's where a lot of the source information for this one came from. So yeah, again, the rhizophagy cycle, guide to endophytic bacteria. So this is a great place to go. So the second you mentioned that, I'm like, that's where I learned. Okay. And yeah, Blaze Fire, definitely. Jeff Lowenfels has some great books. I do enjoy them myself. Good to see Brandon joining us in here today, Mr. Hudson.
We got to get Brandon on the. Okay, so we should probably talk about this. So you're heading off to Europe very soon.
Yep.
So we're going to be stopping this for at least a while while you're gone. And then I'm going to be going to Melbourne, Australia for a little while. But maybe when we get back, we can get Brandon on the show. And you guys can chat with him. He could take my spot. And you guys could have a chat at some point too.
Easily. I would love it. He's been a guest on the Just One Thing series that I do on my channel. We talk about capillary action, and I love he was awesome because he brought like visual aids, and being a very visual person, when he holds the sponge this way and then he holds the sponge this way, you see how gravity and all that stuff works. Guys, I don't want to ruin it. Go watch it. But yeah, well, when I get back, so I will be gone for basically the month of April. I'm going to be going over to the Netherlands. But when I get back in May, we'll be picking this back up. And if you've got lectures to do in Australia, Brandon could easily sit in on one of those. I can easily have a conversation with him and we can keep it rolling.
He is a chatty guy. He admits it himself. And it's Brandon Hudson, by the way, not Brandon Rust, for anyone who's asking. I did meet Brandon Rust at the last Soul Summit, though. Never met him in person, so that was kind of fun.
It's another cool dude. He's another familiar name that we hear in this space sometimes is Jeremy from Build a Soil. Yeah. This was Joseph's question, though. He said, Jeremy had made mention of using sprouted seeds. Grind them up and use it as an amendment in your soil. Wouldn't that be considered malted barley? Or I'm assuming you could do it from all sorts of types, because I know some people who have crap breeding projects and they make seed sprout tea with all thousands of their seeds they will never sell. So I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I can't comment on that, but sure, I can talk about this. So this idea came from Clackamas Coot, with the idea being that seeds contain all the minerals and nutrients that they need to grow at first. They don't need a lot in the soil. They can grow literally without, as you guys can see, you can sprout them on a paper towel. So the seeds contain all of this. And a lot of what that is all these enzymes, and enzymes just help speed up chemical reactions. And so there's all these enzymes that allow these reactions to occur faster. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist. Plants wouldn't exist. Enzymes are really important. They play a huge role. So when you sprout a seed, right as it's sprouting, that's sort of when it's at its highest enzymatic activity level. And so the idea being, if you take any seed, sprout it, and then grind it up right away, you will get a lot of those enzymes. Now, I personally have tried this. I did not get a lot of results from it. And if you go to, let me add a couple other things. So preface this by saying, if you go way too long, if you allow the plant to get too large, or you don't use it right away, or you let it sit, it can actually produce alcohol. So you have to be very careful to use it right away after you make it, make the seed and then grind it. So that's an important thing to know. Malted barley happens to be one of the highest, and seeds with one of the highest levels of enzymes. And then we malt it professionally for brewing for that very reason. Yes, someone listed amylase. That's one of the main enzymes, but there's a bunch more in there. For beer brewers, they're very focused on amylase, but there are other enzymes in there. So a cheat code is sort of taking malted barley, grinding that up, and applying it if we want to talk about enzymes. Now, how well do these enzymes survive in the soil and persist and make a difference in terms of plant growth, or are they just kind of dissipating over time? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know that anyone's done any research on it. Some people swear that sorry, I just read Fred's joke. Some people swear that if you use malted barley or these sprout seeds, they get amazing results. I did not get that in my tomato greenhouse, but I think it's something you could absolutely experiment with. So that's sort of my 2 cents on it. But yeah, you could use any seed. There's no special seed in that regard. But if you're going to do it, why not just get the malted barley? It's cheap. It's done for. You don't have to sprout the seed. It's so much easier. Yeah. So if you want to try it, go that route. That's my recommendation.
I just found the comment that distracted you. Fried Piper. You rock, buddy. You rock. I'm not putting that up on the screen. Okay. We will get to a couple more questions. So if you guys have them, we're getting close to the end here, but definitely still have time for some questions. But there was one star, because we kind of mentioned it earlier. Here, Mr. Leo says, where are you speaking in Australia, Tad? Because I know there's actually quite a few listeners from Australia to the show. So hopefully it's in an area near them. So can you tell me about that?
I'm going to be in Melbourne, the conference. So I'm going to be there the 22nd through the 29th, I think, of May. The conference is called like Farm Out or Farm. I think it is Farm Out. Basically, it's called a forum down there, and instead of a conference, and it's for all sorts of pharmaceuticals, because cannabis is regulated as medical, and they're flying me out to give a couple talks. One of them is going to be sort of like all about what I've learned over the 6 years of podcasting. And the other one is going to be on sort of living soil methodologies and the benefits of it and sort of how it works. So yeah, I'm excited. I've been working with a really large cannabis facility down there called ECS Botanics. I've been on their advisory board for a couple of years now. And they're one of the larger producers of organic cannabis in Melbourne area in Australia. And that's so awesome. I'm excited to go down there and see their farm, and it's going to be a fun trip. If anyone is down there, hit me up. If I have time to go grab a bite or something with someone, or meet up outside the conference, I'd love to do that.
Gosh, I'm glad that they're doing it indoors, because as I'm thinking about Australia and the outback, just the rigorous environment that they have, or the challenging environment that they have. I don't think there's much topsoil combine that with the crazy heat, combine that with not a bunch of wind blocks. So that's cool.
So they're actually outdoors and greenhouse
What?
for production.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Controlled environment, somewhat.
somewhat. There's a lot of challenges around it, actually. One of the interesting things about Australia, because it is so hot, it's really hard to find quality compost. All the compost is super high in sodium because they don't get the rains that allow the sodium to really flush out of all the plant matter and whatever they're making the compost out of. So it's hard to find the same inputs.
It's a lot of hydrophobic soil. Is it sodium soaked to that extent?
Well, so the soils themselves, I mean, I'm sure they vary throughout Australia, but what we've had to deal with is it's really, really hard to get good moisture levels, keep the soils properly irrigated. They tend to want to actually crack, literally crack. I'd have to go back and look at the soil test. I don't remember what the limiting minerals were off the top of my head. I think calcium, but definitely high sodium was a big issue, as well as just trying to get adequate aeration in there. Yeah, it's definitely some challenges, but it's fun.
It'd be fun, but again, that's the fun part about doing what you do. It keeps you on your toes. You get to see different environments. Just when you think you've mastered something,
oh, dude, not even close.
There's a curveball. There's a curveball.
So we're working with a facility in Malawi as well, in Africa, and that has totally different challenges associated with how they're growing. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We got a comment from Cape Town, South Africa. Speaking of, he says he grows organic and just wanted to know your thoughts on using local fruit bat guano found in our caves, pathogens and tests. I mean, yeah, all good movies start with something that came from bat poop. So that's my 2 cents, Tad.
I mean, well, it's going to have nutrients. I don't know about the ecological damage with how it's harvested. I know there is some with a lot of guanos. I can't speak to your local fruit bat guano. Histoplasmosis is what I think of, which is a pretty nasty disease that can be carried by bats. They're like little flying rodents. So I mean, if you were desperate and you wanted to wear a lot of PPE, I mean, maybe you could consider figuring out a way to use it. But personally, I would avoid it for other sources. We intentionally don't use bat guanos in any of our mixes. We don't offer them because of that ecological impact that it has. But that being said, there's also something for trying to find something local and somewhat sustainable in your area. So I appreciate that.
That's awesome. Again, there's a variety of sources that we can get. I know in previous episodes you had mentioned I could use this or I could use that, but one of them I have to truck from halfway across the world. So I'd rather use what I have locally. There's a kind of another question too, touching.
It does tend. Oh, I was going to say it does tend to be high in NPK. Like you can get pretty good available phosphate, specifically I've seen with bat guano. So when people use bat guano, I can usually tell because their available P levels are significantly higher, almost like they're using phosphoric acid. So yeah. Anyway,
here's another one that I just wanted to touch on because our previous episode, you did a great job of talking about just heavy metals and some of the accumulated toxicities in different amendments that we use, land-based or sea-based. And this one, I don't have the answer, but Red Setter Farms, good to see you, says, should you worry about heavy metals in malted barley from any brewer? So I'm assuming that it's not a general issue, or is it?
I'm not aware of malted barley containing a lot of heavy metals, but any kind of plant-based crop has the potential, depending on the soil that it was grown in, to uptake heavy metals. So we can't assume that it's the same with cannabis. We can't assume that all cannabis is clean or dirty. It really depends on what was in the soil that was grown in. And so any plant-based input is really the same thing. Alfalfa, anything.
Cool. All right. Well, I mean, we're getting close to the end, guys. If you have any last minute questions, toss them in. Tad, I'd love to kind of give you the floor. I'm gonna go check and see if there are any beans left on the Daga site, then I'll update you guys. But I wanted to give you the floor for a couple minutes.
All right, fair enough. I do want an update on what's going on with the site. If we sold out during the show, that'd be pretty cool. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So just looking over here in the comments section while we're talking, I just want to say, like, whoever mentioned insect frass or the people that did, I love insect frass. All the insect frass I've seen has happened to been real clean from heavy metals. It's a very sustainable source. It tends to be a great nutrient source too. Like, if you can get your hands on some good quality insect frass, absolutely do it. It's much more ecologically sustainable. So good. Whoever brought that up, good job.
Yeah, it's good one too. And the insect frass plays on the systemic acquired resistance, SARs. I love that one. I want to do a little intro episode for people about that on one of these things. But yeah,
cool. Fun. Yeah.
So
do we have an update?
We do. I don't know if you guys saw the shock on my face. We are pretty much sold out. There are 6 smalls left and 3 mediums. That's it.
So 9 shirts.
Guys. Yeah, 9 shirts out of 100 left. Thank you.
All right, get them for your wives and kids now. If you're not a small or a medium.
Yep. Smaller mediums. Get them for the kids. Get them for the wife. Hide your kids. Hide your wife. No, that's the wrong one. Thanks everybody for supporting. That is, speechless. Thank you.
Congrats, man.
All right, I'm gonna instead of the super silver haze, maybe I'll splurge for some of that imported Cali weed while I'm in Amsterdam. No, that is so silly. So I'm going to Amsterdam again. Well, the Netherlands. I always just say Amsterdam because it's easier for people. I will be in Amsterdam proper for about 5 days, but all of the stuff that I go there to get, like White Widow, the hazes, the amnesias, they're very sick of. So it's always the cheapest on the menu. I enjoy this. The most expensive on the menu by like 500% is all of the stuff I can get here that everybody is sick of and is the lowest on the menu. So like gelatos and runts and Skittles, those are all like 35, 40 euros per gram. Because they say they're imported from California.
Oh, geez.
Wow. Yeah. I will take your €8 White Widow all day, and the hash is equally as cheap, and it's better hash than the concentrates here. So that's
nice. Yeah. Well, are you going to bring back any genetics too to play around with, or is this just?
You know, that's always happened, but I don't anticipate it this time. I didn't necessarily anticipate it last time, but I'm smoking some of it right now, and boy, am I glad. So,
nice.
No, I am going to be doing a few work things over there, meeting up with some of the connections I have as well as bosses. It's funny, most of my bosses are in the Netherlands, and they're 9 hours ahead of me. So I always joke, my Monday morning deadline is Sunday midnight. So Sunday at 11 o'clock, I'm usually finishing touches on stuff.
Wow.
Because they're 9 hours ahead. Yeah, 9 hours ahead there. But yeah, I think again, let's let everybody know that we are going to be taking, on the Chad Westport YouTube channel, we are going to be taking the month of April off for my travel. We will be back in May with the Organics Q&A. So keep it on your calendars. Please continue to leave comments and questions, but you guys aren't entirely out of luck because on the KIS Organics YouTube channel, every Wednesday with Brian Mason,
yeah, I mean, we might switch to every other week too. I mean, in a perfect world down the road, maybe I do one a week, one with you, and then the next week I do one with Brian. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But next week, if people want, I can do one with Brandon on our channel to do a Q&A, just because I love all the questions and I love the interaction. If folks want to to tune in for that. And then when you're back in town, we can do them. We can figure out a schedule that makes sense. It's not too crazy, and keep it going. Maybe every couple weeks or once a month. I don't know. We can figure out what works for everyone.
Yeah, I'd love to, every other week, I think people would be into. Always one of my concerns is just to have a good topic. So, guys, get your topics in, because there's a lot of, knowledge up here and some shenanigans. I'll let you figure out which is which. But yeah, get them in here, because I want to, again, make the most of your time. Both of us pride ourselves on delivering good, clear information. And sometimes if you're on just all of the time, you lose some of that focus, or
that's a good point.
Precise. So yeah.
Well, we could work our way through the various organic amendments that are out there. We could look at different stages of growing, like propagation, or we could look at things like HVAC, lighting, and have conversations around all the just different things you want to consider as a home grower. There's so many topics, but we should nail them down so it's a little more coherent and not just bouncing all over the place. For sure.
Yeah, plenty of time for that. I know I'll be sitting on the airplane with my notebook trying to plot out the next 6 months of what I want to talk about. So that's what I do. And then when I get there, I'm putting it in the backpack and not thinking about it for 3 weeks.
Cool. Well, I hope you have a great trip. So I won't talk to you before then. And thanks for the time today. That was fun.
Yep. My pleasure, Tad. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for answering our questions. Chat, you guys rock as always. Everybody, thank you for picking up some beans earlier. And thanks for supporting the show. Leave us your comments, leave us your questions, and we will see you again soon. You guys have a great day. Thank you very much. See ya.